Hello there, good morning. It's Wednesday, it's 8 a.m., and I'm here to do a live question and answer about taking a break from alcohol and living your best alcohol-free lifestyle. And so, if we haven't met before, my name is Carolina. I'm an alcohol-free life coach, and I believe that there's a secret sauce in you that happens when you push yourself outside of your comfort zone and you do something you've never done before. And doing this with your relationship with alcohol will not only push the boundaries of what you think you know about yourself, but also of what you believe you're capable of, and might literally open doors to new opportunities, new sense of belief, new self-esteem, new pride and confidence, and really a new pattern where their default isn't this old programming, this old coping mechanism, but really stretching yourself and adapting to your thoughts and life and situations in new ways that ask you to be more whole, more resourceful, more creative, and therefore more fulfilled and more happy. So thank you so much for joining me. And I would love to answer a question I got about really, how do you unmarry food and wine? And I say food and wine because, like, what do we have on our check stands? There's literally magazines called Food and Wine Magazine, right? In our mind, the idea, the culture of food, the culture of gastronomy, the culture of fine dining, the culture of being a foodie, the culture of just really diving deep into the food world is always married with alcoholic beverages, right? They kind of go hand in hand. And if you're like a gourmand, if you like to cook, if you like to go to restaurants, if you like to go to chef tasting menus, if you like and enjoy that world, which was, you guys, that was my world, you will notice that everything's a food and wine event. Everything has cocktails. Everything has a beer pair. You know, it's so intertwined. And so how do you unmarry those two and still keep what you love about the foodie culture, about really diving deep into new food experiences, trying new restaurants? How do you keep that up? What do you do? Are there non-alcoholic pairing menus out there? Like, what's going on there? And so I'd love to share, like, I started cooking when I was, I don't know how old, but it was around like 2011 and 12, and I like became obsessed with the food not channel, but the Food Network. Yeah, became obsessed. I started getting all the magazines. I loved getting cookbooks. The idea of like the best birthday I could possibly have was going to like a chef tasting menu at a really great restaurant. I planned trips around food. I was just like a total foodie, and I would read, like, that was just my favorite content to read, was anything to do with food. So this is like one of these great passions that I had in my life, definitely in my 20s, as I was, you know, like not too passionate about my job then. So like my outlet was food, the food world, right? I loved watching cooking shows, and my favorite were the food and travel shows, right? So I was a huge Anthony Bourdain fan. I loved any kind of food and travel show, and I still do to this day. I still am a total foodie. And so, you know, decoupling the alcoholic part from the food part is actually quite a challenge in our society, because they really are married together in the food world, especially if you find a lot of joy in exploring that world, and you find a lot of, you know, excitement and newness in trying new things and trying new cuisines, whatever it is. It can be hard to decouple, but I totally believe that as our society is morphing more into this wellness trend and healthy lifestyle living that includes alcohol-free living, we're opening up new spaces in the gourmand world to invite in new alcoholic options and to unmarry those two things. You know, there was this podcast that I listened to a long time ago, like 2 years ago, and someone, like an alcohol-free life coach like me, was actually sitting down with the editor of Food and Wine Magazine. And she ended up saying something along the lines of, like, I didn't believe, like, I could ever possibly go to Italy and have fun if I wasn't drinking wine in the vineyards, you know? And then, like, the alcohol-free life coach basically said, like, how crazy is that? Like, there's a zillion things to do in Italy that have nothing to do with wine. There's so much fun and excitement and new experiences and new tactile senses and things to try. Like, there's literally 900,099,999 things to do in this world that have nothing to do with alcohol, and alcohol's only one of a million, right? And the Food and Wine editor was kind of like, oh, you did find something different to do in Italy that wasn't just going to vineyards. Like, she was actually kind of surprised. And it's such a crazy paradigm we have, right? That France is married with wine culture, and the only point to go to Italy is go to the vineyards in Florence, and the only reason why we would ever go to Munich is to go to Oktoberfest. Like, it's so married, not only in the food culture, but also in the travel culture. And so this is definitely something that was really hard for me to break, because I so embodied that. That was like one of my greatest passions, was the food world, you know? And Ned, thank you so much for saying it's beer and barbecue, you know? And yeah, absolutely. Like, depending on where you're from, where these kind of cultural, you know, marriages come from, about how we think of, you know, social and cultural activities. They're so intertwined and married, food with alcoholic beverages. So how do you start decoupling that? How do you start unmarrying that and inviting new kind of experiences with non-alcoholic options into your food world? Because you don't have to stop enjoying that food world. And so first of all, it's super interesting to note that alcohol numbs and desensitizes your taste buds. So this idea that alcohol actually helps bring out flavors of food and helps you enjoy your food more, and you know, you have to have the white wine with fish, and you have to have this dark, deep Cabernet with your steak to enjoy it. Like, it is a little bit of a myth. Yes, there's obviously some notes that can be brought out by different drinks within the compounds of the tannins of alcohol, but at the same time, you're numbing your taste buds. And this isn't just like, oh, my taste buds are numb after 10 drinks. Like, yeah, one glass of wine will definitely desensitize your taste buds. And so I have these memories. Every single year for my birthday, for a while, I went to the wineries in Mexico. So I live in San Diego, and just about 90 minutes from where I live, I can drive to this beautiful wine valley near Ensenada in Mexico. And that was like my thing. You know, not only was I doing the wine thing, there was like incredible chef tasting menus down there. There's incredible chefs down there. And also it seems just so exotic. It seems so just like, look at me. You know, my friends are so basic. They're going to wineries in the States. Here I am going to Mexico, right? Really exploring. So it just provided all these needs for me. You know, it met my need for newness and new experiences and kind of uncertainty. It met my need for, you know, feeling cool. Like, look at me, I go to Mexico, I go to wineries in Mexico. It fit my need for sophistication and feeling fancy and feeling pampered and feeling like treated and just like special. It fit so many needs, right? And every single year that I was there for my birthday, my husband and I would do wine tasting all day. And some of these days ended up like, oh my God, I'm just so embarrassed. I started like talking to the person pouring your drinks, like trying to speak Spanish with them and like just starting to ask about like their childhood. Totally embarrassing. And obviously sometimes it wasn't anything embarrassing, just wine tasting that all day that really got me super tired and got me like just feeling kind of funky. And so by the time that we usually had a reservation at a restaurant by like 7 p.m., I never really enjoyed the experience like the way I could have. Like my taste buds were completely numbed. I was totally tired from wine tasting all day. I was like bloated, right? From all of those liquids in my belly. I could barely ever enjoy that 5-course, 7-course chef tasting menu. And it was in October of last year that I went back for the first time as a non-drinker. I had the best time I've ever had. I brought non-alcoholic wine. I went with a friend and our husbands and partners. And then I went back to one of my favorite restaurants there, one of my favorite chefs who actually used to be, I think they're on the best restaurants of the world list, or was in Latin America at least. And he has a restaurant there, and I went to it, and I had the 5-course chef's tasting menu without drinking alcohol that day or having wine, you know, with it. And it was so much more like flavor explosions in my mouth. Like, I really, really enjoyed it so much better. It was so much more like lively, and I was so much more excited about the meal, and I really could taste like the crazy butter and all this stuff, you know? It was so, so good. And so that was just like a real eye-opener that like, not only can you enjoy your food better without drinking, but also you can still go to these food and wine locations around the world and have a really great time. And so decoupling just the idea that wine improves the flavor of food or somehow needs to complement the flavor of food is super key. And the thing is the food world is actually kind of catching up. So there's a ton of really chef forward, like famous restaurants that have non-alcoholic pairings, drink pairings to go with their chef tasting menu. And so, for example, if you've heard of Ludo Lefebvre, he has restaurants in LA. He's from France originally. His restaurant Trois Mecs has a total non-alcoholic drink pairing menu. And the thing that happens with these chefs, and there's a lot of others, like if you've ever heard of Noma in Denmark, they have one. A lot of the top 50 best restaurants in the world have a non-alcoholic drink pairing menu. And the thing that happens with a chef is always looking to innovate. A chef is always looking to get more creative. A chef is always looking to really experiment with new flavors and the ways that flavors intermix together. So it's no wonder that a lot of the most forward-thinking chefs are actually starting to incorporate these non-alcoholic drink pairings in their menu. Because what are they pairing? What's the drink that you're actually getting? They're being super innovative and inventive with that. So, for example, one great non-alcoholic drink pairings that are happening in these really innovative new restaurants, or not new, but just innovative restaurants that chefs are obsessed with finding new, inventive new flavors, inventive new pairings, are thinking outside the box. And so what are some of these drinks that you could find in these non-alcoholic pairing menus? So sometimes they're like a combination of shrubs. If you've ever heard of Shrubs, they're super complex drinks. Basically, back in the 1800s is actually a really popular drink in the US. So back before refrigeration, we used to preserve fruits by mixing fruit with vinegar and sugar. When you mix that and you get like a kind of like a syrupy liquid that you can then mix with sparkling water, it's a way to preserve fruit. So back in the day, Shrubs in America used to be huge. And so today, there's tons of bottled shrubs that you could buy. You can make your own shrubs. I've made my own shrubs before. And the complexity of these shrubs, it's not just like a juice you're drinking with some sugar component. There's the sour, there's the bitter, there's the sweet, there's there's all these complexities to shrubs. And so you can make it at home, or you can buy it, off even Amazon. Just look up Shrubs. And it's super complex. And you can mix it with sparkling water and have a really complex drink. So the one I made at home was, I think, pear ginger. And, it was so good. It was like sour, sweet, pear, ginger, spicy, all these complex flavors. And so I've seen a lot of Shrubs on these non-alcoholic drink pairing menus. I've seen drinks that mimic the same tannins of wine but don't actually have alcohol in them that are also being invented by chefs. So the name totally escapes from me. I think it's called Proteria or something. I have to look it up. But there's this one non-alcoholic drink that is kind of like wine. They don't even call it wine because it's not really wine. That's made with prunes and different flavor components that's meant to be this full-bodied red drink. And it's not even trying to be wine. It's not trying to taste like wine. But it was actually invented and created by a chef, a really top chef on the East Coast. And it's sold, in different places. And so the ways that chefs can become really inventive with non-alcoholic drinks actually, I think, feeds their own creativity in these non-alcoholic drink pairing menus. Sometimes it might be a mix of kombucha with something else. Sometimes they experiment with teas. And so teas are really great because teas actually do have a lot of their own tannins and acidity and bitterness to them that can actually cut through a lot of other different things. So you make a little mixed drink with it or a little mocktail out of it. So tea is really, really could be cool. And you could also pair all these things alone or as chefs really can mix them together to create really complex drinks that go with this. So I haven't actually been to a non-pairing drink restaurant yet. I live in San Diego, so we don't have, no, I think we have one Michelin star restaurant here in San Diego. I'll have to look and see if they have anything. So I think obviously the more inventive chefs are with their food, the more they're going to be inventive with also their drink pairings. So it's probably more of these kind of higher end chef forward restaurants that are really being inventive in this way. But like I said, just in Los Angeles, Chef Ludo Lefebvre with his Trois Mecs has these pairings on his menu. So it's not that far away from me, even if I wanted to try. But then mocktails are everywhere. I mean, mocktails really are becoming a new thing on most restaurant menus, especially in big cities. I can't speak to small cities, but I think in big cities, you'll find at least 3 to 4 restaurants that do have mocktails on their menus. And so those are inventive and fun. And again, it's like the food and wine world is all about flavor. It's all about creativity. It's all about really like finding new flavor combinations that just like excite you. You know, like most of the greatest chef restaurants in the world don't serve the most classic traditional interpretation of dishes. What makes them stand out is that they reinvent them. They have new creativity of innovation in them. And so thinking about the drink pairing in the same exact way, not only is it happening, but that's how you can start thinking about, you know, your own burgeoning kind of sense of food and drink culture. The drink part doesn't have to be alcoholic for it to be inventive, for it to enhance the food, for it to be fun, for it to be a treat, for yourself to feel fancy and special and pampered. And I think exploring this world can really fit all the needs that you might have had that were wrapped around alcohol. And, you know, finding the new pairings, even like doing it at home and like pairing different things, like different drinks with your food could be really fun. Hosting events on your own. And so part of the question I received was like, how do I host these events if I don't have any alcohol-free people who want to try it? So if you do host, if you're a host that has people over, like it never hurts to offer these kind of incredible options, and you never know who's going to try one. So I love trying new non-alcoholic drinks, and I often actually get them sent to me by companies because I blog about them, and I will bring them wherever I go. And there's so many people who are drinkers who want to try them. They're curious. So curiosity really can be a starting point of even inviting and hosting, you know, your own kind of mocktail nights, or just even having that option the next time that you do have people over. Like curiosity you don't have to be a forever non-drinker to have a sip of a new drink, right? Like the way we think about it is kind of crazy. And so inviting in people in that way can always be fun. And then there's like, I love to always share, there are meetups that are usually catered towards non-drinkers in so many different cities around the nation and across in the world as well. And so finding people there that might want to share like your exploration of the food and beverage world without alcohol could also be definitely fun, and something that, you know, you might find a friend in that. You might find people who definitely want to explore that with you. I think those of us who gravitated towards alcohol, that was kind of married with the food world and the food culture and wineries and breweries and, you know, that whole shebang, like there's a lot of us there, you know, like, and there's a lot of even really famous food and wine people who are now coming out that like, you know what, I took a break from alcohol and I really like it. I really like it better. And so this world is just going to keep blowing up. More new drink pairings, more options, more like creativity and inventiveness in there. And who knows, maybe like in 2025, the Food and Wine Festival, you know, the yearly Food and Wine Festival will have like 20% non-alcoholic drink pairings. Maybe they already do. I don't know, you know, like who knows? This is where it's going though. I truly believe in my heart that that's where it's going. And decoupling the idea that you need alcohol to enjoy your food, I think is really important. Not only does it, again, numb your taste buds and desensitize you to the taste of food, but like if the pure like motivation behind exploring the food world for you is trying new things, like being creative, being inventive, really having fun, like I think that there's so much of that can be met with all these different non-alcoholic pairings and options. And so, you know, I started with saying how in my 20s I was obsessed with the food world. I loved all of the, you know, magazines and shows, and I would read, you know, I'm looking at a bookshelf right behind this camera, and there's a whole section of books that are just dedicated to food. Like all of them. I love them. I love reading chef memoirs. I loved it all, you know? And it's not to say I still don't love that. I do, but I think that it can evolve. It doesn't have to include the alcoholic part of it for it to still be just as fun, creative, and inventive with food. And, you know, I'm just brought back to this thing that I said, you know, that I love travel shows. I love travel and food shows together. And, you know, I really liked Anthony Bourdain. And sadly, Anthony hasn't been with us, you know, for a few years now. We lost him due to, he took his own life a few years ago after, you know, like traveling around the world. And I'm sure if you really were a fan of his and if you know him or his work, I think we all thought, like, if only we could have his life, if only we could travel the world, if only we could have all this food and really have that kind of adventurous lifestyle, like, right? Like, he seemed to have it all. And it's really, really tragic and sad, but you know, when they did his autopsy, they found such high amounts of alcohol in his body. And to think that, you know, the sadness and depression he fell into, and, you know, even his motivation in the moment of taking in his own life wasn't connected with alcohol, it would be really naive, you know? And so we lost someone truly amazing and truly great in this world, a true gift of different perspective and just rebelliousness and rawness. We lost him way too early, sadly, due to, in some part, alcohol. And recognizing, I think, that is important, that it's not really as romantic as we all make it out to be. You know, his show was so cool. He's going all around the world. He's talking to people. He's drinking. He's eating. It's not really that romantic. It's really kind of an illusion. And we all know what it actually feels like to do that. We all know what it feels like to drink all night and eat food, even at a fancy restaurant. Like, we feel tired and bloated and gross, and we're kind of embarrassed the next day, and we don't feel well the next day. We've all played out the romantic story to the end, and it never ends romantically, does it? We all sleep badly. We all know how that story ends. We've lived it too many times. And so really letting yourself explore a new story is, I think, tremendous for you. And thank you so much for joining today. I'm so glad that you're here. If you have any other questions, please feel free to join me on the next live, 8 a.m. Wednesday. And you'll find the form to ask any questions in the course Become Euphoric or Become Emboldened. And I'll see you then.